Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Behind the Numbers, the program where we go beyond the data to explore the people, the stories, and all of the insights that really drive business success. My name is Dave Bookbinder. I'm known as a business valuation expert, and I'm also a best-selling author, and I thank you for joining us today. Got a very interesting guest for you today, gang. Her name is Sylvie DiGiusto. She is an international, multi-award-winning 3D immersive holographic Hall of Fame keynote speaker. That's a mouthful. I'm going to have her explain that to you. She's also the author of The Image of Leadership. Sylvie, pleasure to have you. Welcome to Behind the Numbers.
Oh, Dave, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be with you and your guests today.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to this one because you've got such an interesting background. So let's start by having you tell the audience, we'll say the rest of your story. What didn't I share and what do you want to expound on?
Well, where should we get started? Maybe with the accent first that you hear, my personal background. You hear a Spanish grandmother, an Italian grandfather, a French father, and an Austrian mother. And nevertheless, my entire life, I wanted to live in the United States. So right now you find me in sunny Florida. And I spent 20 years in human resources, mainly training and development, leadership development. But when I moved to the United States, I started an exciting journey as keynote speaker. And today I have the pleasure and the honor to spend time with audiences and help them to lead better, sell faster, persuade instantly, and stay forever human despite the technology and the disruption we are going through at the moment.
Great message. I appreciate you sharing that. So I want to unpack all the individual components of the introduction that I share with the audience. And let's start with the book, The Image of Leadership. Tell us about what it is, what inspired you to write it.
Well, The Image of Leadership actually was my first book that I wrote 10 years ago. And I wanted to capture the elements of your professional imprint, what I call the ABCDE, the way you present your presence to others in an organization. Your A for your appearance, your B for your behavior, your C for your communication, your D for your digital footprint, and your E for an environment. However, truth to be told, if you have ever written a book or read a book that is 10 years old, you kind of realize, oh my God, I saw the world quite differently 10 years ago, and the world has changed a lot during the last 10 years. So last year, I went on the incredible journey, not just to update the image of leadership, but also to create 10 custom editions of it. Because the reality is, when it comes to leadership, leadership looks very different in technology than it looks in healthcare. It looks different in retail than it looks in hospitality. And so I dedicated 10 special editions to the 10 industries I have the pleasure to work most with.
Wow, that is fascinating. Visualized. I love that. All right, let's unpack what I said was a mouthful, the 3D immersive holographic speaker.
Ah,
And the audience is in for a treat because we're going to direct them to your website to see what we're talking about here. It's mind-blowing stuff, but why don't you explain it to us?
thank you very much. Well, you see, probably you have all been at a conference, and most conferences follow the same recipe, the same structure. There is an introducer, and then there comes a keynote speaker, and the keynote speaker has a slide deck, and then it starts out with some stories, and then some data and facts, and then back to some stories. And I force myself very often to sit in the audience, to not be the speaker on stage, but to be on the receiving end, and realized how hard and tough it actually is to be an audience member. I find it's the toughest job at the conference. Being on stage is fun. It's do what we do for a living, and it's my happy place. And so for a very long time, I thought about how can I break the mold and how can I offer something different. And I truly believe that also the future of events is not so much anymore in delivering knowledge, because knowledge, artificial intelligence nowadays can provide it to us in milliseconds. The future of events is in providing experiences. So a few years ago, I went on an incredible journey and created something that has never existed before. And I present in a holographic environment. Now you might think holograms existed before, and yes, other speakers use them too, but in the most cases they use holograms to beam themselves somewhere else. I'm in a studio in Florida and I present at a conference in Singapore. But I wanted to be in the room, I wanted to be with the audience. And so we massaged the technology a little bit and added some three-dimensional aspects. And so I actually used the technology to turn the stage and the room into a holographic environment. So rather than just talking with you about the brain and what decisions somebody makes about you in their brain, I kind of flip a brain over us and I walk with you into this brain and I can show you what part of the brains are engaged. It is truly a very magical show that happens on stage and an incredible experience that I'm so honored and so glad I can share with the audiences.
So I hope I get to see you do that in person, but from what I've seen on the video, it's amazing. It's mind-blowing.
Thank
And
you
I want
very
and I
much.
want to give you a chance to kind of humble brag here a little bit because you didn't tell the audience, but you've won multiple awards for this,
Yes.
including being inducted into Speakers Hall of Fame.
I'm very lucky that we won three, six global awards, event awards for the immersive experience itself. And then, as a personal highlight, after 15 years being in this industry, I have been inducted into the Hall of Fame lately by the National Speakers Association, which is truly one of my greatest personal achievements here.
Congratulations to you on that. Well deserved.
Thank
And
you.
one of the things that I noticed from watching, and not just your sizzle reel, but literally presentations that you've done, it seems like you typically begin the presentation by telling the audience that they have 7 seconds to make a first impression.
Mhm.
Unpack that for our listeners today and talk about some of the common mistakes that professionals do make in those first 7 seconds.
Yes. So I just use one study for my work that refers to 7 seconds and 11 decisions that we make about each other when we interact with each other. And the first impression, the imprint that we make on others. But truth to be told, the numbers don't matter as much. It could be 5 decisions, it could be 15 decisions, it could be 11 seconds, it could be 8 seconds. It really doesn't depend on how long it is and what decisions we make. And there are different studies out there. They all come to different results. But what they all have in common is that we instantly imprint an opinion about somebody else in our brains. And then afterwards, unfortunately, a variety of unconscious biases is working against us. Let me give you a very practical example. All of us travel at some point, either for leisure or for business. And let's walk into a hotel lobby. Okay. And we walk up to the receptionist and the receptionist is not attentive. The receptionist is somehow typing on the keyboard, doesn't notice us, and we have to wait. And we are already annoyed, right? Because all we want is that the receptionist sees us and takes care of us. And then finally they take care of us and we walk to the elevator and then we have to wait for the elevator and we walk into the elevator, go into our room and then we kind of smell something weird in the hallways and we walk into our room and we find that little teeny tiny paper that the cleaning team oversaw. The reason for that is that we are heavily biased based on the first imprint that receptionist made on us because our brain is always looking for proof. We want to be right and we ignore everything else that goes against our first initial opinion. If that first impression with the receptionist would have been superb, chances are that I wouldn't even have noticed that the elevator took longer because I'm still in that emotion of joy and feeling welcomed in that hotel. Chances are I wouldn't even have noticed the smell in the hallways, or maybe even would have thought somebody must have been cooking something yummy, or I don't know. And chances are I would have never seen the piece of little crumpled paper in the room or wouldn't have been annoyed by it. And the same is true for you. So what I encourage audiences to do is to craft those first moments. No matter if they are 7 seconds or 11 seconds, but those first interactions more intentionally so that unconscious biases are working for you rather than against you.
Let's talk a little bit about those unconscious biases and how you can make them work in your favor. Is it as simple as looking for the positive in situations and people?
Yes and no. But if you don't try at least to control them, if you don't try to control your impressions, your presence, your perceptions, you give away all the power that you have and somebody else will control it. So what you can do is you can be more intentional about your appearance, your behavior, your communication, your digital footprint, and your environment in those first moments. What are you wearing? What does your body image say about you? How are you looking? Your entire visual image that you create. Because very often we walk into a meeting room, for example, and we don't even have the chance to say something, and people just look at us. And then what about your behavior, your attitude in those first micro moments, your charisma, your emotional intelligence, the micro moments? Did you shake hands? Did you look somebody in the eyes? Did you let them sit down first or last? For us, those things might not even matter, but for somebody else, it might be a big deal. And then how did you start a conversation? What did you say? What were the first words that came out of your mouth, right? Very often we try to sound interesting, but actually we should be more interested instead so that the other person instantly feels like you are there for them, you see them, and you have an interest in their progress, for example. And then I'm going to skip the D for a moment. And your environment, what do you see around them? The physical things. We are in a virtual meeting, right? People could make an impression about me just about my background, your background, how we interact virtually, or when they walk into your real life office, but also the people that you surround yourself with in your environment. What do they say about you? Who do you hang out with? And how do you reflect on them? Now, the reason why I skipped the D is because unfortunately, or fortunately, because it's an opportunity, nowadays, most often we don't make those first impressions anymore in person. We make them in some sort of digital way. We send out emails. People Google our name. They look at our social media profiles. They check if we used artificial intelligence or not. And they create opinions about us before we ever have a chance to meet them in person. And what people very often underestimate is that those opinions will determine if we ever meet in person, if they ever give you with their time and with their attention, because your digital footprint has been so impressive and conscious biases have worked in your favor that they said, I want to meet this person in real life.
Well said. A lot going on there. And you made the distinction between the personal situation and the digital situation.
Mhm.
I was going to ask you about that, but maybe combine it with this thought of defining what exactly executive presence is. I mean, whether you are officially an executive by title or you're someone in an organization who is just trying to present in a
Mhm.
more professional way. But the term is executive presence, and it covers a lot of different components depending on who I'm speaking to. So, what's your definition of executive presence?
Well, I always use this framework of A, B, C, D, E as the tools to create an executive presence in your organization. And I'm very focused on leadership. But what I want you to understand is that, let's call it leadership presence, that each of us, no matter what role or what title we have, in some sort are leaders. There are always people looking at you, and you always want specific people to follow you, right? And this might be official in an organizational structure, or it might be not official. It might be your colleagues. It might be even people from outside the organization. It might be people in your community where you need to use your presence to convince them that you are the right person for that job, for that challenge, for that role, whatever it is. And what I want you to understand is that very often leaders, even without the official title, have a leadership presence or an executive presence long before they actually get the title executive or leader or the role. So, a president of a state hasn't appeared and behaved and communicated like a president the day he or she or they got voted in. They have already appeared, behaved, and communicated long before, maybe decades ago, that somebody thought this is a potential president. A CEO, to bring it into the corporate world, a CEO hasn't just appeared, behaved, communicated like a CEO the day he, she, or they have been appointed as a CEO. They had already that executive presence probably 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, so that somebody thought, oh, here is a potential CEO for the future, and we will work together to bring you on that path, and identified them as a candidate.
So, what's your advice for how to better improve executive presence? I mean, you touched on a couple of things, obviously, how you show up, how you look, but what are some of the tips you might offer folks who just want to be taken more seriously, even?
Well, first of all, be more intentional. Because most of the time we run on autopilot, right? In our appearance, in our behavior, and our communication. And so focus and force yourself on being more intentional throughout the day and also before in your planning. But secondly, I take my audiences through a 3-step process. The first step is to define what your executive presence actually should say. And you need to define this with one word only. You need to define one word that you want to imprint on everybody else, no matter if it's your boss or your colleague or your neighbor. And that one word must become your anchor, because if you change that one word, just to massage it for the audience that is in front of you, just for the person you are interacting with, you come over inauthentic. And that's something people instantly notice. And that word could be trust. And that trust appears, behaves, communicates very different than somebody who chooses a word like innovative, or somebody who chooses a word like caring, or somebody who chooses a word like powerful. All those words look and feel very differently, right? But here's the challenge. Then you need to look into 2 more perspectives, no matter if you are in a corporate environment or if you're a business owner. The one perspective is, does this word also represent your corporate brand or your business brand? Because it's a difference if you want to represent trust and you work for an IT company in Silicon Valley, or you work for a financial organization in downtown Manhattan, right? They both probably have very different brand messages, those 2 companies. And then there's the third component, which means, is this actually what your clients expect from you? Do your clients really come to you because trust is their biggest pain point, or do they have different expectations? And out of those 3 components, I let them craft an appearance, a behavior, a communication style, and a digital footprint that allows them to more intentionally imprint those messages subconsciously. But it always starts with you. If you give up yourself totally, as I said, then you will come over as inauthentic and somebody who's trying too hard to be somebody who you actually are.
Yeah, really good stuff there, Sylvie.
Thank you.
You work with so many leaders, Fortune 500 companies. Based on what you've seen, what separates, we'll call them the average leaders, from the really exceptional ones?
What a great question that is. What a great question that is. I think the exceptional leaders are authentic, but let me add kind of an asterisk to this. Authenticity is probably one of the most overused words in our industry and in the world, because very often people think authentic means you don't have to care. You just be you. But in my world, authentic, and in the world of exceptional leaders, it means you have you have clarity about who you are based on the values that make you distinctive, And those are the real things that you show to the world. And you show that differently in different roles. You will appear, behave, communicate differently as a father with your children than as the CEO with your team, as the husband with your wife, than with the community in your church. Correct? But it's all based on your distinct values. I also think that the most exceptional leaders are actually very controlled. And with controlled, I don't mean they control their teams, the opposite. They are very controlled in terms of their own appearance and their own behavior and their own communication. They don't accidentally let their emotions get over it. They have a plan, they define, they master it, they refine it, they control their presence and how they are perceived by others. And then I also think that those exceptional leaders lead by example. They don't expect their teams to appear, behave, and communicate in a way they wouldn't do it themselves. They know that great leaders are followed because they example, they set the tone for the team and for the entire organization, knowing that everybody in your organization looks up to them and will follow whatever they do or say.
Yeah. And when we talk about that 7 second, just to jump back to that, I mean, I'm thinking about this and I realize I think the human brain has an attention span less than that of a goldfish.
Mhm, mhm.
Is it possible to recover from a poor first impression in those first 7 seconds?
First, absolutely, absolutely. But a second, it's quite hard, right? You have to realize that whenever you can avoid this, it's better for you because it's going to be a hard path. And obviously, it depends on what happens. There are minor mistakes you will recover very, very easily. And then there are really hard mistakes where the consequences were brutal that will take longer. And the best path is always to recognize it and decide, is this something I have to apologize for? And if you apologize, then really apologize and mean it, right? And if you apologize, then don't make excuses for your behavior. Just recognize what went wrong and what you will change in the future. And then obviously you have to stick to that, right? You really have to change it. And then you need to be patient and convince the other person again and again and again that you really changed your behavior and that you learned from your mistakes. But again, it takes consistency, persistence, and it takes time. You have to be patient.
Yeah, people want to see it in your actions, not just your words. Good point. There may be some folks who are listening to this program right now and thinking, I'm never doing this. I don't like speaking. I'm not going to stand up in a room and present anything, even though we all know that at some point they're going to have to. Maybe they just characterize themselves as introverts.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
let's run with that for a second. So for people who are listening and thinking, I'm introverted, none of this stuff really lands with me. What's your advice for them to develop powerful presence without having to pretend that there's something they're not?
Should I share the biggest secret of the speaking industry with you?
By all means, please do.
Most of us, and you will be very surprised, but most of us are introverts. You can ask 10 speakers, and my guess is that 7 or 8 out of 10 speakers will tell you that they are introverts. And the stage is that place where we are by ourselves, right? We are alone. We kind of have control over what we do, and there is a huge audience in front of us, obviously. But then, if you speak with most speakers afterwards, we can't wait after obviously connecting and networking with the audiences until we go back into our rooms and we are just quiet and all by ourselves again. And so if you are an introvert and you are scared of speaking on a stage, if it really scares you and you have the option, then don't do it. If I talk to professional speakers who are at the beginning of their journey and they tell me how scared they are, then I honestly have to ask them, is this really the right path you want to go down, right? Because it's my joy of happiness, even if I'm an introvert. It's my place of happiness, even if I'm an introvert. But the other thing is, I want you to change your mindset that speaking in front of people is actually not about you. It has nothing to do with you, no matter if you are an introvert or an extrovert. Speaking is never about the speaker. It's always about the audience. And you're gifting the audience with something they didn't had before. You're gifting them with your knowledge, with your insights, with your experience, with your stories. So turn away the fear from it's about you and focus on it's all about the audience. And with that confidence is your best designer. Walk on a stage or in front of the group and reverse engineer your talk that it has nothing to do with you. It's all about gifting the audience.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me when I first started out in speaking, understanding that it's not about me.
Hmm.
So get out of your own head and worrying about how you look, how you sound, how you're moving, whatever. It's not about you. Come with that giving mindset that you're
Hmm.
bringing value to your audience, and that's what they
Yeah.
want to hear.
Yeah. And even if you have something that holds you back, I'm going to share a personal story if you don't mind. As I mentioned, I have quite a multicultural background, and you might notice a heavy accent. And I always thought, with that accent, I cannot go on stages and speak in front of a group of people. It was really one of my biggest insecurities and holding me back. But then I got invited on a TV show out of nowhere. They asked me to come to a studio and be part of a panel to comment on the public persona and perception of politicians. And I found myself in between those political experts with picture perfect English. Words so sophisticated and complicated, I couldn't even understand most of them. And when I watched the show in the evening, it was horrible when I listened to myself, in between all those picture perfect American experts. But they invited me back, and they invited me again and again and again. But I never posted it on social media. I never shared it. I never told anyone because I was so insecure about myself. I made it all about me. Now, at the holiday party, I was sitting together with the producer, and I shared those insecurities with him, and I pointed at my mouth, right, and said, I don't understand why you invite me again and again. And he pointed at my mouth and he gave me the greatest gift ever. He said, that's exactly the reason why we invite you. Because you sound like an international expert and you say things so simple that everybody in the audience understands you, but nobody understands the experts. So what I thought is actually my greatest weakness turned out to be my differentiator, my greatest superpower.
Wow.
And maybe what is holding you back right now in your insecurities, no matter if it's your executive presence or if it's public speaking, might actually be your superpower. Think about it.
Yeah, what a mindset shift. That's a great way to totally flip the script. Cool story, and I thank you for sharing it. We're just about to the end of the program here, but I want to give you the last word, maybe around some tips or ideas for the audience that they can literally take away, maybe when they're done listening to this program, to improve their presence, their leadership, their influence, their personal brand. Your choice, all of the above. You've got whatever time you need.
Okay. Well, let's start with what we talked through, right? We started out with first impressions. Be aware that wherever you walk into, in every room, no matter if it's an online room, if it's a social media room, a Zoom meeting, or wherever you appear online, people will instantly create opinions about you. Make sure that you craft them in a way to ensure that people are so interested in you that they actually want to have an in-person interaction. Then we talked about the ABCDE. Craft those elements based on your word first. What do you want to be known for? But don't forget your business brand or your corporate brand and massage that message into and analyze what your clients actually want to have. And lastly, we talked a little bit about the 3D immersive experience. And I don't expect you to create a holographic experience. But if somebody ever told you something is not possible, turn around and prove them wrong, because that's what I have been doing, and it has been the greatest gift ever.
That's one of the greatest motivators. You'll never get that done. Yeah, watch me.
Actually, what?
Yeah, exactly. Sylvie, tell the audience how they can find you, how they can connect, where they can see some of these really cool videos I was talking about.
Oh, thank you very much, Dave, for asking that. I really appreciate. You can find me on the internet. If you don't find me on the internet, probably you don't have Wi-Fi or a cell phone reception at that moment. With my name, I should be all over the place. You can find my website. You can find my books on Amazon. You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, wherever you look. And I would love you to say hello, leave a comment, and let us know what you thought about the conversation that I had the pleasure to have with Dave today.
Yeah, and if you're out there and you're responsible for getting speakers for your conferences, you are missing out if you don't get in touch with this woman.
Thank
Go
you.
check out those videos. The presentations are amazing. And man, would that just raise your conference game. Sylvie, thank you so much for joining us today on Behind the Numbers.
Thank you very much for having me, Dave. It was such a pleasure to be with you and with your audience.
I really enjoyed the conversation, and I know the audience did as well. And I thank you out there for tuning into Behind the Numbers. If you did in fact enjoy today's episode, why don't you take a quick moment, leave us a review on Spotify or Apple? That stuff actually really does make a difference in terms of who will actually find this program. So really appreciate that. And also, don't forget, I keep telling you, crush that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. Until next time, my name is Dave Bookbinder, reminding you that the numbers tell the story, but the people bring it to life. Take care, everybody.